Welcome to Indian Polity classes. Now we are starting with our Government of India Act of 1858. So till now we are discussing or we were discussing the company rule. Now we are discussing or we are starting with Crown's rule. So why there is a difference? See what happened in 1858, you might be knowing that something called revolt of 1858 happened. So what happened that the Indian rulers or so many zamindars, peasants, they were fighting against the Britishers. It is called an revolt of 1858. Now why this revolt happened and all those things, they are part of modern Indian history. Right now we are not concerned about that. We are only concerned about the political part of that. So in response to that in 1858 revolt happened, the the British government, what did they do? They just suppressed the revolt. Okay, they just won over all those kings and all those peasant other warriors. So they just suppressed the revolt in 1.5 year. So after that they passed this act. Now there were so many changes that were made in the act, so that the entire administration or entire political structure can be changed in the Indian or in the country. So why this act was passed and all those things we will discuss when we will discuss the provision of the act. So first is that act was passed in the context of the revolt of 1857. Revolt had exposed the limitation of the system of administration. That's why this act was passed. Because see, we have already seen that so much of power was there in the hands of the governor general, so much of centralization was there. So the central authority at the center, they were not aware of the actual ground realities, actual grievances of the locals. So they were not aware by that. So it is obvious that there will be so many limitations would be there, isn't it, in the administration, because you are not aware of the actual ground reality. So many discrepancies would be there. So that's why this act was paused. Okay, the act of 1858 thus abolished the rule of East India Company, because the rulers thought that this East India Company, it is very exploitative in nature, because it is generating so much of revenue, continuously waging wars against so many kings, just like we have seen the Nawab of Bengal, he was thrown out. Then Madras, if you know, the Tipu Sultan and other things, so they were thrown out. Then in Maharashtra area, Marathas, they were thrown out. Then in Punjab, they were thrown out. So entire Indian territory was converted in the British territories, or they were captured by this East India Company. At the same time, the practices that the East India Company was promoting in the name of commerce and trade, they were exploitative in the nature. They were exploiting the local zamindars, the local traders, the local peasants, the local farmers, even the local kings and local rulers. So all of these people, they combined together, they came together and fought a war against, fought a battle against the East India Company. So it thus came to known as Act for the Good Government of India. So Britishers thought that okay, these people are fighting against us because they are thinking we are exploitative in nature. So let's pass an act in the name of good government of India, so that they will know that oh, we are not exploitative. We have come here to serve the Indian people or take care of their interest also. So this act was passed. Viceroy of India. It changed the designation of Governor General of India to Viceroy. The first Viceroy was Lord Canning. Again, the factual detail. Only the name changed. The position was same. Only the name changed. In fact, the function was also the same. It ended the system of double government by abolishing the Board of Control, Court of Director. We have seen in the earlier act. See, there were double government in the form of Board of Control and Court of Director for the political and administrative function, political and commercial functions. So it was ended by this act. Crown rule. India was to govern by and in the name of the crown through a secretary of state. It means in England a different new post was created by the name secretary of state for India. It was in the England. Okay, secretary of state would be a member of British cabinet, was responsible to British parliament, he was assisted by. So again it's a factual detail, not that much relevant. Only thing relevant is the double government was ended, new post was created in the name of secretary of state in India. Okay, what was the significance? Transfer of power from company to crown was formal, not substantive. Means the, again, because see, Britishers, the purpose of Britishers was to exploit India, isn't it? Purpose was not to serve India, to take care of interest of India. It was not the purpose. So they were only fooling Indians. They were only fooling us that okay, we are passing this act in the name of good government, but actually reality was different. The company was already deprived of its powers through the series of acts passed since the late 18th century. See, we have seen through so many successive acts from 1773 to last charter of 1853. What happened? We have seen that act by act, the power was taken from company and given to the crown or to the British government. So in this act, you are saying that okay, right now the power is transferred to the crown from the company. It is actually just formal declaration. In reality, it has already happened through so many acts in the past. Act was largely confined to improvement of administrative machinery, did not significantly alter the system of government that prevailed in India. So basically, the administrative structure of the company or the government was changed. Just like new post was created, like Secretary of State, double government ended. So this thing was there, but in the ground reality was same. That did not alter. The exploitative nature was same as the before. Now, what happened after 1858? See, revolt was there. In response of the revolt, Britishers they pass an act, but the Indians they understood that this act is, is not to that much for Indians' interest. It is not in the interest of the Indian. Actually, these Britishers are fooling us. So this consciousness, this Indians were also being educated and they were also having this consciousness that now these Britishers they are exploiting us economically, politically, socially, and educationally, because so many, or leaders like Naroji and others, they studied so much about the economy of Indian state, the trade of Indian state. So what they found that when British arrived, and by the time of these 18th century and 1858, what happened that the GDP or the trade or the profit and wealth that India was having reduced drastically. They published even a book like Drain of Indian Wealth. So these books was published by these many leaders that these Britishers are exploiting India economically. The trade that they are having is actually benefiting only the Britishers. This trade or this commerce is not in the interest of Indian. Similarly, politically also, we Indians were being educated because so many Indians they started studying in these schools is opened by these Britishers. They were also started studying abroad, so they were also having the same type of education like these Britishers. So they understood all the game that these Britishers are fooling us. So this consciousness are also started in Indians also. So what happened after 1858? That growth of political consciousness in Indians. There was growth of political consciousness Indians, demand for more representation of Indian day by day, because they understood that these Britishers are ruling us. They do not know anything about us. Still they are ruling us. The Indians should have part in the lawmaking, in the administration, isn't it? Because this is the country for India, so Indians should be part of the authority of or the entity that is ruling over them. Need for cooperation. Beside the above pressure, the British also realized the need for cooperation of Indians. So we have already discussed that Britishers don't know anything about India. They do not know the ground realities. So it would be better that if Indians become the part of administration. Policy of association. In pursuance of this policy, three acts were enacted: 1861, 1892 and 1909. So what was the first act? Indian Councils Act of 1861. So see, we have seen revolt was there. So again Britishers passed an act. Now the Indians started demanding their representation. So again the Britishers has passed an act with the name of Indian Councils Act. So basically it's like a carrot for the donkey. That the donkey started shouting, and the owner of the donkey gives the carrot so that it can stop shouting. So same thing was done by the Britishers. Whenever Indians demand something, they will fool the Indians by giving something else, by not giving the actual things demanded by the Indians. So we will see that this act. So first provision is nomination of Indians, provided that viceroy should nominate some Indians as non-official members. So Indians were demanding representation in the legislative body. Said because this is our country, so we should be made part of the legislative body, because we know about our country, we can make better laws. So what did the Britisher did? They say okay, you can be part of legislative body, but they made fool of us. How? They made Indians part of legislative body, but how? Non-officially. It means for the namesake you are part of legislative body, you are not having any significant real powers. Okay, so non-official members were there. Restoration of legislative powers. Restore the legislative power to Bombay and Madras. So now you are saying that revolt was there. Even the local segment of society, that is peasant and farmers, the workers, they were also fighting in the revolt of 1857. So Britishers thought that we should start decentralization of powers, so that the local administration, they can understand better the ground realities. So the powers that were taken away from Bombay and Madras, they were given back to them. Issuance of ordinances. So viceroy could issue ordinance. What do you mean by ordinance? See, ordinance means we have legislature. Purpose of legislature is to make laws. So when the executive starts making laws, it is called ordinance. So ordinance is a way by which the executive makes the law by passing the legislature. Okay, this is called ordinance. Again, ordinance is a separate topic in our topic of president. The portfolio system introduced by Lord Canning was given recognition. What do you mean by portfolio? See, we have different ministries. Ministry of Education we are having, Home Affair, Finance, Defense, External Affair, Ministry of Railways, Transport, so many ministries. This is called portfolio system. Significance: it made a beginning of representative institution. So because Indians were started to be a part of the legislative body, so it make a beginning in the representative institution. Okay. Policy of legislative devolution resulted in the grant of almost complete internal autonomy to the provinces in 1937. So see, we have seen that Bombay and Madras were given their powers back. So subsequently, year by year and or act by act, more powers were given to the provinces. Now the Act of Indian Councils Act of 1892. See, these acts are related to only councils. So in each an act, what would happen? That the number of non-official representative would be increased in each and every subsequent act. For example, in 1892 what happened? Official majority. It increased the number of additional non-official members. Okay, but maintained the official majority. It means the official majority was maintained, but more number of non-official members were uh, included in the legislative body. Why? Because more and more Indians were demanding their representation in the legislative body. So Britishers agreed that okay, we will increase the non-official strength of our body. Non-official membership was increased, but again, non-official means what? It is for only namesake. It increased the function of legislative council, gave them the power of discussing the budget and addressing question. Again, the factual detail. Next is university, district board, municipalities, zamindar, trade bodies, chambers of commerce were empowered to recommend members to the provincial councils. So basically, you are seeing in this act that this more and more representation is more and more representation is being taken, because non-official members increased. More number of Indians were represented in the non-official as a non-official members. Now these bodies like university, district board, all these bodies, they were empowered to recommend members to provincial councils. So this representation was increased. Significance: though the term election was not used, it made limited and indirect provision for the use of election. So directly election word was not there, but we can see that so many bodies like universities and all those, they are recommending someone for their representation. So it is like an election. Indian Councils Act of 1909. We will discuss it in another class, because it is a major act. So many provisions are there. So we will discuss it in another class.